Macarons are renowned for being especially tricky to make. So many things can go wrong in the process, and trust me, I've had my fair share of mishaps along the way. But after a lot of tweaking and research, I've finally unlocked the mystery of a successful macaron, and I want to share it with you. For this recipe, you will need 95 grams of ground almonds, 100 grams of icing sugar, 35 grams of egg whites, 100 grams of granulated sugar, 25 ml of water, and another 35 grams of egg whites. So, tip number 1 is to wipe around your bowl and whisk with either lemon juice or vinegar on a piece of kitchen towel. This ensures that the bowl is free from grease and allows you to whisk a successful meringue. Pop one of your egg whites into the bowl and just leave it for now. We'll come back to this later. Tip number 2 is to sift your icing sugar and almonds. This helps get those really super smooth tops. Use the finest sieve that you can get and don't force any large lumps through. My recipe actually calls for 90 grams of ground almonds, but I add a few more grams as there are usually very large pieces which I can just discard as I put the extra grams in. To complete the first part, we simply add the other egg white and mix through. You don't have to be too careful how you mix at this point, just incorporate the egg white fully until you get a sticky, pasty, dough-like consistency like this, and then move this to one side and we can make the meringue part. Tip number 3 is to not mix your sugar whilst it's boiling. This will create sugar crystals which can affect the consistency of the mix. Simply pour the water over the sugar and place on the hob over a medium heat. We do need a thermometer for this next part as we need to get the sugar syrup up to 118 degrees or a soft ball stage. Keep a close eye on the syrup, and once we get to around 110 degrees, we can pop the egg whites on that we put into the bowl earlier. My tip number 4 is to add a pinch of cream of tartar, which will help to stabilise the meringues. Begin whisking slowly to build structure and then move it up to a medium speed. Looking back at our simple syrup, we're carefully watching for that 118 degrees. Once it hits that temperature, remove it from the heat and begin drizzling it slowly down the side of the bowl. Please be really careful and keep the stream of syrup away from the whisk, as it could easily whip up hot syrup and it could burn your face or your hands. Now if you touch the side of the bowl, it will be very hot. We're going to continue to whisk until it has cooled to room temperature and we have stiff peaks. This will take about 8 to 10 minutes. As you can see, the meringue can hold its own shape and it doesn't drip down. Tap the excess off the whisk and we can move to the next step. My tip number 5 is to add half the meringue into the almond mixture just to loosen it up a bit before adding the rest. This will prevent overmixing, which could lead to a runnier batter, and when piping it would just kind of spread out all over the tin and not hold its shape at all. We're going to dive straight into tip number 6, which is while incorporating the last bit of meringue, mix in 8s and O's. This means that you run the spatula around and under the mix in a sort of 8 and O shape, so you don't beat out all that lovely airiness that you got from the meringues. I want to use mine to make 2 different colours, so I'm going to stop mixing just as that meringue has been stirred through, and I'm going to divide it into 2 bowls. So, my tip number 7 is to always use a gel or paste food colour. You don't want to alter the consistency, so liquid food colours are out of the question. I'm going to repeat that 8 and O's movement to slowly mix the colour through. Now, I don't want to panic you, but we are at a very critical point in the mixing process. Everything can be completely fine up until this point, but mix it just too much and the batter is completely ruined. What we are looking for now is that infamous ribbon or lava consistency. We want the mix to slowly drip from the spatula without dropping down too fast or staying where it is. A good test is to try and draw a figure 8 or fold it back and forth on itself, and if you can see the pattern for the count of 3 before it settles, then you're at the right consistency. If it's still quite thick, then continue mixing to knock out a bit of the air and then check again. If it's too runny, unfortunately there isn't much we can do at this point, so just go really cautiously and don't rush it. This is now the perfect consistency, so we can pop it into a bag and pipe. Tip number 8 is to use a small-ish nozzle. This will allow more control over how much batter comes out. This is quite a runny batter, so twist the bottom of the bag before filling and then leave it in the glass until you're just ready to pipe. For a guide, I'm using a circular cutter and an edible pen to draw circles the same size I want my macarons to be on the back of the parchment paper. You could also print off a template to pop underneath. The macarons will spread slightly, so give them about a 2 cm gap in between. It also allows the air in the oven to circulate. To stick the parchment securely down, I use a little of the batter in each corner and place the paper on top. To pipe the macarons, hold the bag vertically and gently squeeze until the batter is just shy of the template. Release the pressure and quickly pull the bag off. This may take some practice, but it does get easier, I promise. Continue until all the batter is used up, and then comes the equally fun and noisy part. We're going to lift the tray and drop it down. I do this a few times, turning as I go, and this just releases any tiny little air bubbles in the mixture. This prevents cracking during baking and hollow shells. We now have to leave these to dry out a bit before baking. This is what creates those cute little ruffles, or feet as they are more commonly known. The time this takes is dependent on humidity or temperature of the room, but a rough idea is about 30 to 40 minutes, although this could be up to an hour. To test if they are ready to bake, gently touch the tops. If they don't leave any stickiness on your fingers, they're ready. If not, just leave them a bit longer and check again. These are perfect, so they're going into the oven on 160 degrees centigrade or 320 degrees Fahrenheit for 14 minutes, rotating halfway through. Bake each tray separately in the middle of the oven for an even bake. To test if they are done, they should easily peel off the paper and have a fully cooked bottom. If it's still sticky, return to the oven for a few more minutes and check again. These are perfectly baked and have those little feet I was talking about. You'll use 2 of these with filling in between to create the finished macaron. Also, as you can see, they are still chewy inside and not hollow at all. To fill my macarons, I made a simple ganache, and I'm using a 1:1 ratio of finely chopped chocolate and pouring over the same weight in just boiling double cream. Leave this to sit for 5 minutes to allow the chocolate to melt, and then whisk to get that silky smooth consistency. Don't worry if it looks like it's about to split, just keep stirring and it will all come together. Cover the top with cling film right on the surface to stop it crusting and leave it to cool at room temperature. While that's cooling, I'm going to decorate the shells. I start by matching up the 2 halves as good a match as I can. Although I used a template, some of them are slightly bigger than others. To give the finished macaron a little bit more decoration, I take 1 shell from each pair and drizzle over some melted chocolate. I then add some gold sprinkles and allow these to set. So it's been a few hours and I'm going to see how my ganache is looking. Just look at that silky, smooth, chocolatey, creamy goodness. So I'm going to resist scoffing the whole bowl and I'm going to pop it into a piping bag instead. I'm using the same nozzle as before and filling each one. As you can see, I'm not going right up to the edge, as when I pop the lid on, it spreads out evenly. And we're done! I know it's a lot of steps and hard work, but once you've mastered it, they really are a great treat to make, to have either on their own or you can add them to cakes for decoration. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and if you'd like to see more, please do consider subscribing to my channel, hit the notification bell and like this video.